October 11th, and I'm not really here right now. Find out what's going on in just a second.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live, episode 696. We're closing in on 700 episodes. How cool is that? Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure Anthony will be back later in the week. So I'm excited because lots going on right now. I'm off to Chicago right now, which is kind of why we're recording this episode in advance. I'm going to be speaking at the Hospitality Asset Management Association's annual meeting along with Anthony doing a keynote on Friday. How fun is that? Where we're going to be talking about all of our favorite interviews over the last year and what we learned from them. Maybe I should have them record that so we could run it here. What a fun time that's going to be. Also, speaking about fun times, I want to give kudos to our friends over at Radisson Hotels, which is now, of course, part of the Choice Hotels family. Why? Because they've got so many great brands that investors are going to even get more profitability of now that they're part of the Choice Hotels family. I'm talking about Radisson Blue. I'm talking Radisson Red. I'm talking Country Inn and Suites, brands like that. Plus, established brands from the Choice Hotel families and even new ones such as the Ever Home Suites, which I've been reporting on excitedly over the last couple of weeks because it is so much fun to see a new brand launching in the sector. All right, everybody, today we're going to go do things a little bit different, a little bit fun, because instead of talking about the CEO of a management company or a hotel brand, we're going to be talking to one of the most experienced GMs out there. John Murtha is the area managing director and general manager of Omni Parker House, and he's been in the hospitality industry 40 years, 25 years experience as a GM of urban and resort hotels, plus he's chairman emeritus of the Massachusetts Lodging Association, dare I say even a Hall of Fame member of that association, and also oversees a number of Omni products in the New England, Middle Atlantic kind of area. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. John Murtha. Great to see you. I never read anyone's bios, John, but I really wanted to orient you. It's pretty cool, this journey you've been on. What are you thinking about when you reflect on 40 years? And I guess I should say hello, welcome to the show first before I get into it.
Well, thank you. And, I think I appreciate that, the time I've spent in this industry has been recognized by some people. Hopefully I've been a contributor to it. Always been very aware of the community in which I work and tried to do things that would, allow my property at that point in time to play a role.
Yep.
It just takes a little bit more of my time to make that kind of a difference, and happy to do it.
Yeah. So you've been in it for 40 years. You've been a general manager for 25 years. So let's go back to the olden times. The 1900s was when you first started. How different is being a general manager today than the first day you put on those shoes?
So the first property that I managed was what we would today call a select service type property, rooms only, no real food and beverage. Right. Although my first jobs out of school were in F&B, but it was an opportunity for me to sort of learn the ropes with a more simple operation, to put it mildly. And then, as I moved on and upward in my career, I was able to adjust to more complex types of properties, including resorts, which have lots more bells and lots more moving parts, let's put it, than a typical city center hotel.
So it's interesting that your first GM role was in a select service hotel, and you know this, but a lot of our younger viewers may not know. That was kind of like the golden era of the select service hotel when they really first started coming into the fore, and all the major hotel brands said, we're going to start building a lot of these. And they started transferring over to these big franchising companies from being brick and mortar ownership type businesses. I like what you're saying, how you took that challenge of the select service hotels and then you kind of worked your way through, because one of the biggest philosophies I have in life is you can't take on too much at once. You kind of take on something, you figure it out, you learn the mathematical formulas behind it, you make it part of your routine, then you start learning more. It sounds like that was the kind of stuff you were able to do in your career path.
Yeah, and it was, I wouldn't say that I always felt completely prepared.
Well, none of us are ever completely prepared
for the next step. Right.
We're prepared enough that our unpreparedness will probably not be our downfall.
Exactly. Because you still, every job you learn something new.
Right. Every day, I bet you learn something new, right? So you've been in this role for a long time, and this hotel, it's really cool because it's a historic building. I know the original building isn't there, but we were talking before we went on air. You said the Parker House has been there since 1855 and continuously operating, the oldest continuing operating hotel here in the United States.
Well, sometimes we like to say longest instead of old.
Oh, sorry. Yes, longest. That's pretty cool. So,
and lots of history in this hotel, lots of firsts, and we originated Boston cream pie in this property in the 1860s.
Wait, hold on. We're gonna have to go in. We got slides here that are gonna do this, and Dr. Suzanne is freaking out. We don't need her freaking out over there, right, Suzanne? No freak outs.
Please don't.
All right, good. All right. So before we get into all of that, what are some of the interesting and unique challenges about operating a historic building as opposed to one of these beautiful new buildings that are opening up all over the United States over the last 20 years or so?
Well, it pretty simply put, it's keeping everything working the way it's supposed to work, even though the components may not be all brand new.
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking about like how I've gone back when the Waldorf was open, and hopefully that'll come back soon enough.
Come back,
going down, level after level after level, and seeing these giant machinery that was put in when the original hotel was built. So you must have stuff in there that's almost like stepping into a museum for some of the systems that you have in that building.
Well,
right?
we do, and a lot of it's very boring components. Like you have to get fresh air into the lobby. Right? That lobby that's sitting right behind you. And some of the components that are needed to make that happen are over 40 years old and have to now be replaced.
Right.
So when I'm faced with what do I spend money on next year, just some basics to keep the property in good order and working successfully, it's boring stuff that the guest never sees. But if we didn't do it, they'd feel it one way or another.
They certainly would. But it's one of those things where a big chunk of your budget then is probably eaten up by that. And you have to be extra creative in order to continue moving the hotel deeper into the 21st century.
Correct.
So it's not stuck at the end of the 19th century.
Correct. I have a quote that might interest you.
Yep.
In this regard, because it hits on this. And I was going to say, all right, it goes, a hotel cannot afford to rest on the laurels of a day, a year, or a decade.
Right.
It must keep pace with the growing requirements of the public, and these requirements must be carefully and intelligently studied, or the hotel is bound to retrograde. There is no help for it.
Right.
The public appreciates fame in a way, but does not care to live on fame when it comes to hotels. The past may be all right, but the public likes to have the present all right too. That was written on August 23rd of 1902.
Oh, wow. By whom?
It was in a Boston Globe article. I don't have the author, but I did find it. And it's so nothing's changed, right?
Right. No, nothing has changed. And over the arc of your career, you've had to keep making constant changes, right?
Yes,
so how do you identify when it's time for you to make changes in your policies, your strategies, the way you are as a manager, and what is that process like over the years?
So we keep an eye on what our competitors are doing, for sure, not only locally but nationally. We're part of Omni Hotels and Resorts.
Yep.
So we have to make sure that what customers expect of an Omni, we are certainly implementing here. Albeit we probably angle it towards our historic nature more so than some of the newer hotels would be. But let me think. So, for example, when I first arrived here in 2007, the hotel had Ethernet available internet connectivity.
Yep.
So you had to have there was a plug on the wall and you had to plug into it, right?
Yep.
So that fairly quickly became obsolete, and we had to migrate to Wi-Fi, and we're actually now on the second upgrade of our Wi-Fi system. When we first went to Wi-Fi, we had one access point per every 7 guest rooms.
Right.
And that was okay when people had one device.
Before on-demand Netflix type behaviors.
Precisely. And, the family came and everybody had an iPad and an iPhone. Now we have one access point per guest room.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty serious.
And that, and that was a very expensive proposition
Right.
for a 551 room hotel.
Right. And again, goes back to what you're saying is you have to spend all this money for things that guests don't see. It's an expectation.
Yes.
So they don't come in going, oh, this is exciting. I have what I think I'm supposed to have. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Producer Suzanne is putting out statistics that we're all familiar with. It's she said 2.3 devices per guest typically. I mean, if you look at the way I travel alone, I've got my iPad, I've got my phone, I've got my laptop, and I use all of them regularly for different reasons within my room, all attached to the internet. And sorry to upset your system there, but sometimes I'm streaming on all of them.
Yeah, and hopefully you're going to have no problem with our system. And honestly, we don't. As long as people can get connected on our system, they're perfectly content with it.
Yeah,
it works.
So how much time do you have to spend focused on not just your property, but you're also working with like the Omni New Haven at Yale Hotel, Omni Providence. I love Providence. What a great city. The Omni Mount Washington, Omni, Omni Boston Hotel, Seaport, all that kind of stuff.
So it's a balance. Fortunately, there are good general managers in all four of those properties. And I consider myself more of a support.
Oh, cool.
For them in making sure that they have the tools and the supplies and whatever they need to operate successfully. They're all very different markets, have different needs. If I'm here at work 5 or 6 days a week, I'm probably, if I aggregate my time together, at least one full day is worrying about the other properties.
I'll tell you, it's a great role to be in, because what you're able to do is kind of what I feel like my role is on here. Take information from all these disparate spaces, put them together, and then help the entire community, right? So you're able to get ideas from all the other properties. You're able to create best practices and then implement that across the board, right?
And also perhaps support an area in one hotel that maybe needs some help with an associate from another hotel who is free to do that.
Right.
I'm working on something right now to take one of my associates here out of the HR and position her up at Mount Washington for about a week to help them get through a busy period. And so that because I have a sense of what's going on in each hotel, I'm oftentimes able to pick and place to help out one of the hotels.
Right. That's very helpful as well. And I'm forgetting the date, but we did earlier this year, we did a interview with the HR director for all of Omni. And she was talking to us about how creative some of her ideas were about how you could utilize people in different properties if you need to on different days, and how maybe you'll pay housekeeping a little bit more on the weekends. So I love that you're all being super creative out there. How is that helping in terms of what you feel your retention rate is compared to other hospitality venues in New England and Mid-Atlantic?
So I can tell you here at the Parker House, we have an annualized turnover of about 10%.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And that's not unusual within our company. We don't have a million hotels like some of the bigger brands. We have somewhere between 53 and 55 operating right now, with a few more under construction. But our culture is one that places a high value on the associate, and therefore we strive to, certainly pay them fairly, have great benefits, and just take care of them from an employee relations standpoint, such that they, what's the point in leaving if I'm doing well financially and I'm happy and my boss likes me? Why go?
That's right. And the show I was referring to is with Joy Rothschild on June 15th. That was really good. So this generation of young people is I think very different than your generation, which is different than my generation, So how has your management style changed to better adapt to the way people are today, and while recognizing maybe some of that hard scrabble stuff that we did back in the 70s and 80s doesn't work anymore?
Yeah, well, in the 70s and 80s, the way you got ahead in the hospitality industry was by working very long hours, 6 and sometimes 7 days a week, and kind of putting aside whatever you had your life outside of the business in order to establish a reputation for being hard work and having a great work ethic and being successful with the guest. I'd say my generation certainly was willing to work longer and harder to get to that point. Today, students coming out of hospitality programs, so they're 22, 23, 24, they have, let me put this kindly, they have a much faster pace for that in mind.
Agreed.
They want things, they want the acknowledgement and they want the pay much more quickly than we ever expected.
That is true.
Yep.
To defend them, things cost a lot more money and a higher percentage value then. But
fair enough.
Now to slam them, y'all got to learn before you get paid.
Right.
You know, you can't just have this expectation of making X salary when it's not commensurate with the actual experience you have. Now, if you have that experience, and the salary should be commensurate with it. But I do agree that there's a little too much rushing to get there without putting in the hard work. I think my generation, Generation X, is kind of got it right, but every generation is going to say they got it right, right? Because we work the long hours, but we also have started to learn how to take care of ourselves, and we're not afraid of the hard work, but we set boundaries at the same time, you know?
And by the way, I don't want my comments to seem critical.
They're not. I was more critical than you.
Of the Gen Zers and so forth. It's just very different. And I have to sometimes remind myself, hey, you're talking to a different group of folks here, and they listen differently too. So you have to be sensitive to that. And we want them in the business. So if we want them in the business to come in, we're going to have to adapt to their mindset of how things should be.
Agreed. And I used to be like when the millennials first started coming in, and I know we're talking about Gen Zs, but when millennials first started coming in, I kept hearing people on stage going, oh, you know, when I'm at the conferences, we have to adapt to them. We have to adapt to them. And my attitude was like, well, I had to do it the hard way. I had to adapt to what the CEOs wanted. Why can't they do it? But now, as I've gotten older and I've seen the shifting from millennials to Generation Z and see how their patterns are changing, now I'm starting to believe maybe they do have it right, that their life is the important thing and the career isn't necessarily the full driver. I've spent way too many decades that I probably should have spent doing other things that might have made me a happier human being. But I don't know. I guess it's just your priority and what your generation kind of steers you towards, right?
Yep. And I think goals have a lot to do with it. You know, my goal coming out of school was I was going to be the GM. Right. And maybe even someday own my own hotel. And if that meant making sacrifices along the way, I was going to do it because that was my career goal. Yep.
I love that younger people are more focused on getting out there and having those experiences and doing things. I spent too many years like on a train going back and forth to the city, for example, you know?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I think our guests are also now very much like that. You know, I don't think that travelers now necessarily look upon their hotel stay as simply, you know, a room with a bed and a place I can get breakfast in the morning. Right. They are kind of looking for an experience.
Yes.
And that places a greater demand upon management to be more creative and differentiate their properties by creating experiences that maybe aren't available elsewhere.
Yeah, particularly because we've been in what I've dubbed the experience economy for the last 15 years or so. I see it as we moved from more of a materialistic society up till the Great Recession. Then we started really focusing more on the experiences that we wanted to have in our lives. But it's so much harder now because with our connectivity to, you know, these phones and stuff like that right here, pretty much every experience is available to us in the world. So you really have to understand what your client is about, what the expectations are, and then over deliver on that promise. So at your property, how does that work itself out? And how does it play into this beautiful dessert over here that we're looking at? And I should say, we're going to talk a little bit about some slides and the history of the property. We'll put a link to the audio podcast if you're listening to audio. Thank you so much for supporting us there. And we'll try to use some good word pictures. So, John, what are we looking at here? And how does this create experience in your opinion?
So that is an individual sized Boston cream pie made here all the time, every single day. We also have the full-size 10-inch pies available, but this would be typically how somebody would be served Boston cream pie in one of our restaurants.
I love that.
And it serves one. And this pie was created here at the Parker House around 1860, somewhere in that time frame, by one of the bakers here at the hotel. and it probably didn't look exactly like this then.
Probably not. I mean, this has been reinvented for a modern era, probably the same recipe and stuff. But instead of like being slices out of a giant cake, they're small individual cakes.
And it's pretty much all the same ingredients.
Right, of course.
Just, it's put together a little bit differently now to appeal to today's palate. And we sell a lot of this, I have to tell you.
I bet you do. Moving on. What is this machine that we're looking at?
That's a Duchess Divider, and that unit is at least 75 years old. And it's what we use to imprint the dough for Parker House rolls, also invented here at the hotel back in the 1800s. And then the dough comes out of that device and it's crimped, so then it can be pulled apart, folded onto a sheet pan for baking, and then they'd be uniform in size.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, here's the recipe for the Parker House roll.
This is an old version of the recipe. We still we still have recipes available. People over they were created here, but Parker House rolls have become part of society at this point, just like Boston cream pie.
I made them for my son and I made them for Thanksgiving last year, and it was fun reading about the history and then eating them. Yeah, please continue.
So Parker House rolls and Boston cream pie are two big elements of our history. The third one in the culinary world is there's the Parker House rolls, fresh out of the oven. One of the secrets of the Parker House rolls is 3 times on the butter.
3 times.
And it includes this post-baking spread.
I love that. And they are absolutely beautiful and delicious. I want to go back to the recipe over here. Do you have to translate for the younger kids, because I think it's written in code because it's in script? Can they even read it?
Well, it's pretty simple.
I'm just kidding.
It's flour and eggs, and there they are on the table here in Parker's restaurant.
That's awesome.
And a lot of butter, as I said.
Yeah, well, you can never have too much butter. And the good news is, everybody, these were invented before butter was bad for you, so you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. All right, so some historic people that have been here. John Kennedy.
There's the 10-inch Boston cream pie. That's the normal pie.
Yep.
You see John Kennedy.
I call that a single serving.
That for some, that's actually serves 10 to 12. So that would be a lot. Jack Kennedy and Jacqueline. Jack proposed to her at table 40 in Parker's restaurant here at the hotel. Yep, back in 1951 or 2. Ho Chi Minh there was a baker here. From 1911 till about 1913. And interesting, about once a year, maybe once every other year, a delegation of Vietnamese politicians and dignitaries come to the hotel because they want to see the table that he worked on. We still have a tabletop that he would have worked on.
Wow.
I think we have Charles Dickens.
Hold on, before we go on, for those who don't know, it's a former president of North Vietnam back in like the 60s, 70s kind of.
He's considered the father
60s era,
of Vietnam as we know it today.
Yep, exactly.
You got Charles Dickens there. He was staying with us back in the 1870s when he did his first reading of A Christmas Carol here in Boston. You have Mark Twain, who was also a guest of the hotel on more than one occasion.
Right.
To his right, you have Malcolm X, who was a busser in Parker's restaurant during World War II. Eleanor Roosevelt, she's in here because it was really her request for the Parker House Rolls recipe that made it public.
Really?
It was provided to her in the 1930s, and then was so that they could produce Parker House rolls at the White House. And that was sort of when the recipe went public, as I said.
That's pretty cool. And you guys have a museum on site too to recognize all of this.
Yes, we have a gallery that we've put together over the last 15 years or so, in pretty much of an organic way. I would find stuff or images or other artifacts, and we started collecting them and presenting them so that the guests can get a better sense of the history.
Right. And this is the
That's
table where
that's table 40, which is where Jack proposed to Jacqueline.
do people still request that
All
table?
the time. People know about the history.
Wow.
And people will call up and say, "Hey, it's a surprise. I'm going to propose to my
Right.
fiance. Can I get
Oh,
table
that
40?"
is
Of
so
course.
cool. That is
Of
so
course.
cool.
Yep.
And this is
That's
another
it there
picture.
too.
And let's go to the this
All right.
is
So this is Jack Kennedy when here at the Parker House when he announced his first run for Congress.
wow, looks really young there.
He does, and that's his
wow.
father to his left.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Wow. I'm just blown away by this these old pictures. So how important is that history element to telling the customer the overall story of your hotel, and how does it play into that experiences that you're delivering?
So we position the Parker House on three primary points. One is our first off, believe it, it's not the history number one. It's our location in the dead center of downtown Boston. Anyone coming to Boston, if they're here, especially if they're here for sightseeing, they kind of want to be in the middle of everything to see, and we are. We're right on the Freedom Trail. You can literally walk out our door, and it's right there across the street. So we say to, if you want a great experience of Boston, you should pick the Parker House. Next, we would focus on the history, because if you're really here to see Boston, then we've been here a long time, and we've played an important role in a lot of the history that's been produced here in the city. And then the third thing that we like to hang our hat on is our service. And it's mostly because we have a large percentage of our staff that's been here for a very long time. They've made their careers here. Right now, we have 35 staff members with 30 or more years of tenure here at the hotel. The longest serving associate is a guy named Weston, and he works in banquets right now. He's been here for 48 years.
Wow.
And then I have people with 46 years and 44 years. And they can tell the story. And our guests, especially our repeat guests, they know who they are. They see them all the time. And I believe that gives sense of comfort to guests to know that there are certain people who have made their life with us and feel comfortable in doing it.
That's amazing. What's the secret to those people staying so long, do you think?
It's a busy hotel. It has a brand that people are proud of. And being busy, it means that they have consistent work.
Yeah.
They're always going to be employed. And it's a place for them to, have a family and buy a house and do all the stuff that people want to do with their lives.
That's beautiful. I love that. So if you're looking out to the future, what's in store next for Omni and all the properties that you're seeing? What are some of the big things that you're passionate about, you're thinking about, or you're concerned about?
So, I won't belabor it. I'm definitely still concerned about staffing in all of our hotels. It's a challenge these days more than it was 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a challenge then. We will continue to operate our hotels as well as possible, and I think the people will come back eventually. We're a good place to work, and so that's if I'm looking amongst my group of hotels, that's probably the thing I'm most concerned about is, are we able to staff up? Then for someplace like the Parker House, we have to think about perhaps some significant renovation of our guest room product, as part of us being successful and maintaining, like I told you about that quote at the beginning. People they're interested in the history and the location only so far, but then they want a regular hotel experience while they're at it.
They do, but you're also challenged with the fact that it has to feel as if, but not actually of the original era.
Exactly. And the design that we're looking for a guest room renovation actually harkens back to the days of travel in the late 1800s, but with a new, so it'll feel historic, but essentially be brand new, if you see what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
Our hotel up in Mount Washington, we just opened this year a brand new 69 room addition to that
Wow.
property with great views of Crawford Notch and Mount Washington itself.
Wonderful.
That's been very successful, and I think it again, people really want to be in Bretton Woods. They want that historic experience. They want to see Mount Washington and go skiing and golf and all the good stuff that we offer up there, but they want to have fantastic facilities to stay in while they're enjoying all those activities. And then New Haven and Providence are strong city center properties that serve a wide variety of customers. And our intent would be to keep those properties always very modern and up to date.
Yep.
And then we have the Omni Boston Hotel at the Seaport, which only opened a year ago.
Yep.
And that's a huge 1,000-room convention hotel that we're seeing great business now that sort of citywide conventions have come back.
Yay! That's fantastic. I'm excited for you for you folks over the next year or so. I think there's lots of good opportunities to be had out there. Any final words before we wrap up today, sir?
No, I think it's been great. I've really appreciated this opportunity to share a little bit about my hotel, my hotels, and Omni as a whole.
Yeah.
We do have within our group 15 hotels that are members of Historic Hotels of America.
Wow.
So it's a rather large contingent within our brand that focuses on our history as well as providing great service. So again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and maybe I'll come by and see you. I got a son up in outside Boston in Brandeis. He just started this year, so I'm
that's
up there.
That's only about 10 miles from here. Very close. Come by and say hi.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, so I hope you guys learned some great lessons today. You know, experience does count for an awful lot, especially being able to be flexible, to be able to adapt over time to better meet the needs of your core customers, which is your staff, as well as your other customers, the ones actually staying in the hotel. Plus, what about those challenges of working within older buildings? Some of the challenges of even working in newer buildings that might not have as definitive of a history as this one. So lots of really great, interesting stuff to talk about. Another interesting thing that I would highly recommend that all of you talk about, and that is, of course, getting our audio feed. And that's on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you want to book, wherever you want to listen to your shows. We are there. So the next time you're taking that dog out for the walk, say, hey, I'm going to listen to some No Vacancy Live. And if you are listening to us, why not watch us? Check us out on all the social medias out there. I'm at Traveling Glenn. He's at Anthony Hotels. You're the most gorgeous audience out there. Thanks so much. And we'll see you here tomorrow, where I'm going to be broadcasting live from the Sable Navy Pier Hotel in Chicago. That's going to be a good, fun one. Talk to you guys then. Oh, yeah. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on. See you tomorrow.